Hello, everybody. Cristiano here. It's time for Critical Role Campaign 4 Vibes Tier List. Bum bum bum. So, I just finished watching the first episode of Campaign 4. Um, and I have some thoughts, but it was a long episode and there was a lot of characters. So, I figured the best way to structure any casual thoughts about the episode would be to do a tier list of sorts, a tier list of characters I thought were interesting, or things I'm excited about for campaign 4. So without further ado, let's get started. So first we have Travis's character Teor, something like that. I'm gonna mispronounce a lot of these names because they were not on screen. They were not in gameplay for a long time, and a lot of them were a little bit exotic. Some of them are easier, but I digress. So Teor, geez, I already forget. This guy was pretty interesting. He kind of fit in with a lot of the military types. The beginning of this episode had a lot of like the more martial vibes characters kind of doing doing their action. It had what's his face, the other big military type, ooh e Luis's character, Azun or something like that. Azun was the starter of the show, but Taylor was a bit later, and he kind of came in during the funeral, so he didn't have like his own solo scene to kind of set the vibes with. But I thought it was interesting. He reminded me a lot of Travis's character from the Calamity series, trying to be observant, kind of a guardian, stoic guardian in that sense. Um, Still not sure exactly what the class he is. I mean, he said like lay on hands at one point. Uh, he cast Cure Wounds. Who knows? But I'd say this is a pretty neutral. I like the persona of like a more observant martial. It's not a really strong start necessarily. It doesn't have a strong like big emotion, but I think it's leaves a lot of room to develop, and I could see this character, you know, getting dragged along or going down a lot of different paths. So I'm gonna give it a strong B. Uh, when I do these two kinds of tier lists, I'd say B is like kind of the more neutral positive sense, and then if you go down like C and D, it's where it gets like a little less, a little bit more negative in terms of ranking. But I think a B is like, you know, nothing super standout, nothing super negative, but generally positive. Um, Next we get Abria's character. Geez, what's another name? Taisha, I think was like the main pronunciation. Taisha, something like that. Um, Another hard to judge character. Very much druid. Lots of like trying, like a lot of Abria's scenes were trying to convey like something druidic. Like it was like, oh, I'm making the flowers bloom or wither, or I'm making trying to communicate my emotion through nature. So that kind of fit. But in terms of like where her character is in terms of a vibe, it's a little bit hard. She was like, oh, I'm a. She was doing kind of like I'd say normal Abria things, which is kind of being a little fangirly, like, oh, I'm hooking up with the tyranny. I'm going around doing like some party stuff, while still trying to be stern. I like the sternness. I like the I am part of a powerful political faction posturing that was going on. Um, there's still a lot of questions about the world, about how influential like the druids are. There was like some kind of promotional stuff that seemed to imply druids are like the new pseudo world order. But still in this first episode, hard to say. But again, I'm you know I'm still leaning. I'm leaning positive. She there's a lot of stuff you can do with the character. It's only the beginning. Um, a little bit, I think there's a little bit like a lot of I felt a lot of just like a player being excited for being in a campaign. I didn't get like as much of a like in characterness, if that makes sense. It's maybe a cop out because like something like Taylor had less screen time, but I think the vibes that he you know emitted were pretty telling for the character. A little bit less so for Taisha. So I don't know. I'm gonna still put it. I'm gonna put it B. Maybe it's leaning towards a little bit C, but I'm gonna put it B. For you know, I think it's a lot of potential, but I wasn't seeing like a big sweeping vibe from it in this first episode. Um, I did like, I guess kind of what carries. I like the scene with Taisha and Julian was really good for establishing both characters. Um, I like to lean towards more villainous slash complicated characters. So perhaps that's my bias. So Taisha being like, oh, I'm a good guy. Respect the funeral procession. Uh, but I'm also just like, oh, I'm gonna help everybody, kind of mood. And be a strong rock is a little bit less of a, you know, positive trait that I like in a character. But like, that's not to say it can't develop. So yeah, I'd say in a strange way, Taisha had like probably the most like lines out of any character. I feel like she was the most omnipresent in a lot of the scenes. Like there was always like butting in, but I didn't feel like the and perhaps that sense, she got less of a persona projected. Anyway, let's move on. The next character. Geez, I didn't even get this character's name in gameplay. Murray, Marisha's character. So, yeah, there was like one defining scene. Like the defining scene was her character entering the funeral and like just like being colloquial, being local kind of Kentucky native. Oh, hey guy, how's it going? Oh, I know you. A bunch of local town vibes. But that was kind of it. There was like not a lot of time for her character to do much. There was a little bit later when Ashley's character came in and she tried to attach and go on, but that was like near the end of the episode, so still kind of hard to say. I'm just vibes. I'm putting it C just because uh you know I think there's a lot that can happen. I'm a little bit worried that this is a little bit of an autopilot character from this first impression, just because it was more the character was more like, oh, it's a mood. There's a lot of saying, oh, this is just like Marisha's mom or something. And when you do that, I feel like I didn't feel like she was as connected to the world as a lot of the other characters were. She was more like connected to like some NPC, like some feelings of an NPCs of a vibe of a world, not like I am connected to this order and I'm connected to these players, kind of thing. So I'm gonna put it C. You know, that's not to say it's bad. I'm just like less. I get less excitement from the initial appearance in this first episode than the characters above her. So next up, Tyranny. Oh, it's so hard to judge these characters. The like very impulsive, passionate characters. I really liked the dynamic. Oh, I guess I should. I'm less familiar. I guess Whitney Moore is playing this character. Um, I'm not super familiar with her. I didn't watch any of the. I think she was in a previous miniseries I didn't watch, so not super familiar. First introduction. She has the energy for this character. Um, like once again, a little bit worried about, you know, she at least had the advantage of she's very much situated as part of this, you know, like royal family that, you know, Sam Riegel's character is part of. Um, you know, that is at least a strong tie, but again, like the um kind of the role playing aspect did not like why is this family summoning demons? Like why? She's like a newborn demon, I guess. Like she seemed to be pretty, you know, ignorant of at least custom or, you know, politeness. Um, you know, her character, she like ran into a funeral, got drunk, caused mayhem. Uh, I'm gonna put it C. I'm a little bit again. It's a worry because like ideally these characters are, you know, the jester character, the little bit like they're pushing the plot, they're pushing action. You know, you can get a bunch of role playing people in the room and they could pontificate forever, but you need a character that's gonna push the party to do stuff, and I think that's this character. But you know, I guess it's a little bit of danger. Like, there's also the opposite temptation where instead of pushing the narrative, it's more, um, you know, they are just vibing. They're just, oh, I'm partying. Oh, I'm being impulsive. And then the scene, I'm going to talk to this NPC. I'll romance this person. I'll do whatever. But it's not, like, connected to any narrative through line or personal character arc. So that's my worry. Like, I didn't like that like one of her like main actions was like uh spiriting Sam Riegel's characters away like from this party after from this confrontation. That would have been cool if it was like Tyranny recognized that this was a bad situation and had some respect enough to protect Wick or whatever. But no, it was Abria's character that, you know, set up the softball. It's like, oh, you need to leave. You need to avoid this confrontation. So, in that sense, there's like a little bit less agency. Um, yeah. So, hopefully, this is kind of establishing the pattern that I'm rating these on. You know, I still think this was a strong character start. You know, I think any character at the start is at their strongest in terms of potential, of course. But that's what I worry vibes wise. So next is Ashley's character Valis. Valis. I think it was like Valis or I forget the pronunciation within the episode. Yippee! But yes, another incredible and you know, this is a vibes tier list. Immaculate vibes. Big like, you know, controlling the room energy. Like Ashley nailed this, like just the role playing entrance. Again, unfortunately, not a lot of time, but I think the like main scene she was in was really striking. Yeah, immediately like tied in these old gods. You know, she made an impression and her character, and she made an impression with a strong narrative of like, oh, I am this elf who was under the care of this life goddess, um, and that's my vibe. You know, I am the old order, uh, you know, still powerful, but you know, demands respect in a way. I didn't like a little bit that it seemed like Brennan had to like feed all the life goddess lore. Like she like Ashley was not prepared with this Nightstone info, which seemed like a little bit of a like that's your main deal is you're trying to find the stone. You're telling me you didn't prep, but it was okay. I think she obviously it was still a strong entrance, and I think it still worked, just a little bit. I think I'm gonna put this like A. Um, it would be S if she was on top of her lore. If she was like, bam, oh, someone asked, oh, what's this Nightstone look like? And he goes, bam, it's this like vivid description and with like some with emotion behind it. Then it would have been good. But it was a little bit like, oh, it's a small rock, and that a little bit undercut the entrance a bit. Next up, Julian, Matthew Mercer's character. Holy immaculate vibes. I love antagonistic characters. I love that this is, it's antagonistic, but it's not like it's not immediately hostile. It's very like it's like mid Game of Thrones Jamie Lannister where or like the height of pride, pride in your station and your house, and also like some morally gray ambition. So I love that he entered, he commanded the room, he had displayed knowledge, like he there was like the scene where it's like, oh, describe what you're doing during oh god, so I forget the death of the freaking, these exotic names are killing me. The orc who died at the beginning of the episode. Describe what you're doing during that execution, and he was, oh, I'm hiding my emotions, but I'm glad, and I talked to this noble. I felt a little bit like undercut by like, oh, he like tries to reaffirm his allegiance with this NPC, and Brendan's like, oh, this NPC has no clue what you're talking about. That was a little bit not matching the vibe. So I think like maybe that's a hint towards future interactions of Julian being more intense, more political, Game of Thronesy, a secret like allegiances character than the story actually wants to be. That could be a problem. But for this first episode, I think it's what you wanted to do. Strong character impression, strong connection to the world and the lore, and yeah, good vibes. Next character. So Taliesin's character, Bolair. One of the least exotic names, I suppose. I guess Julian's less exotic than that, but Bolair also was interesting. So Taliesin usually plays pretty similar characters in the campaigns, except for Caduceus. But yeah, I think this is on the stronger side of a Taliesin character. It's like you are, weird, esoteric, knowledgeable in the arcane, knowledgeable in this information, but not like, oh, I'm helpful, but oh, I'm gonna take this info and be mysterious and be enforce my will. And when you get to stuff like Ashton was very like, oh, I have this big mysterious backstory, but I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm not going to explain myself. And I'm going to wait until someone else talks to me to explain it. So, a little bit of that. I think, for the most part, his character just like entered, talked to people, hung out in the back of a room, and rolled high arcana to know what was going on, but didn't act on it. That being said, I mean, I don't think a lot of the information uh, he got during the gameplay was like actionable. Like he saw the shadow following Julian. He saw, I guess he knew about the Nightstone thing. But before you could really use any of that information, it kind of, the episode ended. So I'm gonna put it B. Um, you know, Interesting vibe. Still, I don't think he got as definitive of a scene as like Julian did or yeah, God, I forget these names already. Actually, Valus did. But I still think it was, I think it was setting up well, and I liked like a lot of the OG cast members came in with, you know, as much as I currently Marisha's character is the lowest right now. At least all the cast members came in with like, bam, I know how to, you know, role play my character and kind of like emit the the social graces that I want, and talk like my character, and they're voice actors, talk and act on point, and they all had their own distinct thing going on, and I think Talazin's character did that well, but again felt a little bit, you know, there was baked in connectedness, but I a little bit less on the acting on it. Um, so I'll put it B. Next character, Wick. Right? Wickander, Wick, Sam Riegel's character. Love this character. Amazing. Uh, yes, the personality of the character is like, it's annoying. Sure, but it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like the annoying, sheltered, like Catholic kid. But I love what his character like. Along with this character is a whole religion, a human religion in a world where there are no gods anymore, and this is like, basically like kind of the Catholic Church or something. And I love that this character like brings with him an actual order, religious order that has more parallel to reality, real world religion. Obviously still very fancy coded and fits within the universe, but human crafted to fit the need of the people, as opposed to a normal D&D or Exandria religion, which is the gods are literally there, and that's the religion is believing in a god that you could literally see and feel their influence. One of my big things for campaign 3 was there was a lot of valid and criticisms of human religion, that were being brought into Exandria, but the religion was fundamentally different. It's fundamentally different when there's literal gods who are influencing the world in very visible and physical ways, and orders around them. So, I think this is good because now if there's a character that doesn't like the religious order in real life and wants to make that a part of their character in campaign 4, then it has more teeth, it has more comparison. And yeah, so along with this entrance of he got his Wick got his scenes, like he came in unsure of himself but trying to kind of strike out in the world and do adventure, make your story kind of thing, make your mark, do your thing. um Strong stuff. I the one open question that I think I wish Tyranny illuminated a little bit more, and it seemed like Sam Riegel was a bit in the dark, was what's the deal with these demons? They're aspirants, they're like wards of this light god order. But why? For what purpose? It's a show of strength, I suppose. More to delve into that, but that's the only weakness, but I still think this is an S tier just for, you know, immaculate representation of the character, as well as along with the character. I'd say it's even more than Julian. So, along with the character bringing this whole religious order that I think fits really well into the world, and makes me excited for interactions in the future. All right. Next character, Alexander Ward as Octus. Another character that I felt had low amounts of time in the spotlight. Um, yeah, Octus was. I like necromancers, so a little bit of a bias there. Um, there was like some stuff in like the cooldown and some other promotional stuff that like, oh, he's part of a noble house that is evil or powerful or intimidating. I didn't get that vibe from the character. This could very well be any noble house. Like he seemed like a nervous noble, but did not represent his house. Like Sam Riegel, very much trying to represent his noble origin. Alexander Ward's character, very much on the run, rebelling against. Who knows? It was hard to say. So, I still think it still has a lot of potential, but just like this initial episode didn't get as strong of a vibe. And since it's a vibe tier list, I'm putting it down. I think I'd still think like a little bit less than Tyranny, more than Marisha's character, Marie. So I'll put it there. So next is Liam O'Brien's character, Hal Fang. Great. So first off, I mean softball integrally tied into the plot with the brother's death being the linchpin of episode 1. So I think that helps a lot vibe wise. That being said, character wise, like he was like also along with Abria's character, like one of the most present characters in the episode. But it's mostly in kind of like, oh, I'm being a host to this funeral and I'm reassuring people. There was some solo scenes, like you definitely felt like Liam tried to get a couple solo, like he's ripping up this deed to this theater, so he's going from a thespian to a adventurer, I suppose. But it was hard to say. Like there was lots of mention of this brother was like a rebellious figure. Unclear what the sides of the rebellion are, that kind of thing. I'm unsure of the conflict from this first episode, and so I was a little bit. I wanted a little bit like, oh, like so what's who are you going against? Obviously the people who killed your brother, but is there any more open stuff? So I want to put him I think I have to put him B though, just because of just vibes wise didn't come in as strong. I think this is a very has a high potential character in that obviously I think Liam's good at doing these very like melodramatic perhaps but deep emotional brooding characters, and this is obviously it's going to be a College of Tragedy bard, tailor made for the player class and theming. So I think this will be strong. I just need for this to be stronger. It needs like a more direct tie to the world and like what's he adventuring for? What's he gonna do? There's still 3 episodes of the Overture left. I assume it'll be established and then it'll be good. But this first episode, I'd say it's a B. Next is Robbie's character. Cadigan? Yeah. So, detective character? Detective ranger? Um, yeah, he came in. He was drunk. He was like, "Oh, there's I'm gonna cast Clue. Is that a homebrew spell? I have no idea." But he cast it. Is this a custom subclass ranger? Is this a ranger at all? I don't know. Came in, cast Clue. Was like doing, I guess, like kind of a hammy detective character. I liked, you know, it had generally positive vibes. Like most of these characters, all these characters have good vibes for the most part. But he was a mercenary. I guess he was. Does he have allegiances? He's kind of a mystery man so far. Not a lot to delve into. He also had a pretty short introduction scene that was pretty overshadowed by Thimble and Laura's character. So I'm gonna have to put C. I think again, high potential. Um, high potential, but just this first episode didn't get as much of a chance to shine. Um, yeah, so I think it's a good fit for the player. Being kind of like a hunky, damaged mystery man, perhaps. I think a little bit overlap with Dorian in a way, um, but we'll see where it develops. And those are my vibes right now. Next is Luis's. I can't. Louis is it Louis Luis? I think it's Luis. Uh, Character Azun, something like that. Uh, Vibes. He, you know, he got to start the campaign basically with a solo scene, and being part of this integrally tied to whatever rebellion this brother of Hal's is part of. So for that alone, I think it was a strong showing. Now that being said, the rest of the episode, did he really do much? He showed up to the funeral. Was like, oop, we got to talk about the plan. They barely get to talk about it. They get shipped off to the next scene, with is mostly, recovering Thimble and establishing that character. Um, so a little bit dragged along, but I'd say still strong. I think strong enough to be B. I don't know about A. I don't know, but again, good potential. Good fit with the player, and we shall see where it goes. I'll put him a little bit less than Hal. About this order. Uh, Next we have Thimble, Laura Bailey's character. Uh, yeah. So I like. I've been talking a lot about feeling part of the world. I like the idea of this fairy who was basically trapped on the other side, before the connection to the Fey realm was severed in this rebellion. So kind of a once playful, immortal trickster spirit type character now has to be more grounded in his fighting. So it's hard to tell the overall vibes of the characters, partially because she came in rolling death saving throws on death's door, and a lot of the time she had on screen were like kind of shaking herself up and going, oh, what, they stole something, we were attacked, the plan went wrong, oh no, like deep emotional right off the bat, but does not get a good sense of what her overall character is going to be for the rest of the series. That being said, I think this was still a strong showing because it really tied her into the world, and now she's very attached to this Hal, as well as the sundering of the gods and mortal kind of divides. So I think it's like an A. I'll go A. little bit leaning towards B, but I'm pretty happy with this. So this is my tier list. Again, I obviously nothing's D or F. I think this is a strong episode to start campaign 4 with. Um, that being said, I mean it was pretty much character introduction the episode. I like that. I like seeing unique characters and unique kind of menagerie of personalities and motivations. Um, Very quickly, that newness will fall off. So if the action doesn't pick up or a narrative doesn't emerge in the next couple episodes, it'll be a rough time for campaign 4. But so far so good, and I think they did set up a lot of good threads. I'm interested to see how they will juggle these characters. Are they going to split these tables off in the overture like they did before, where they have an A and B side kind of? I think the idea of this overture is that not that they're all in the same scene necessarily, but that they're mixing and mingling in ways that will be not representative of the final tables that they end up with. So I kind of expect next session to be a combat of some sort. I have no clue what the kind of the shadowy mask stuff, what the deal with that is. Obviously, it's a big mystery. It didn't read as anything tied into like the gods or any of this rebellion stuff. It was it felt like an even more third side thing that was going to be perhaps an antagonistic force in these early episodes. But yes, overall strong episode 1, and I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to see. And this vibes tier list, it's not it's not a character tier list. It is a initial impression. So we will see how this goes. Maybe all these characters down here will have a really good arc or do some really cool actions and stuff in the next sessions to come, and they'll be the best characters of the arc. Maybe Julian will get lost and not be able to do kind of the Game of Thronesy, alliancey shiftiness. Like maybe he won't have the opportunity to do that, in which case, what's he doing here? Kind of thing. But overall, I'm positive about this campaign. Just like campaign 3, I'm positive. This is as top of the roller coaster, ready for the dip, ready for the excitement, and ready to get this campaign going. Thank you all. If this gets posted somewhere, thank you all for listening to my thoughts, and maybe I'll keep doing this. I had fun recording this for sure. So thank you all. Goodbye.